In today's show, we're talking positional tiers for fantasy basketball drafts. In particular, we're looking at the shooting guard position. Michael Bolton.
Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd and I am the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com and at Yahoo Sports Australia, and you can find me on Twitter as always at redrock_bball and on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. A reminder, Basketball Monster is open. We are open for the new season, so check out the projections, check out the articles, check out all of the tools over there, including Draft Tracker. All of that good stuff is available for you, so go to basketballmonster.com and also check in the notes and the description of this show to join my Discord server as well. Well over 1,000 people in there talking fantasy basketball, so jump in and have a chat as well. We're here to do another positional tiers video, so of course I'm joined once again by Matt Smith, and in all the excitement in the last show, Matt, I forgot to hit the button for you.
Smitty.
There it is. Thank you, Josh. How's things?
Things are going well. We're here to do another tiers show. We did point guards yesterday. If you want to hear a description of what we're talking about with tiers, go back to check yesterday's show. You can check out the description or the explanation that both myself and Matt gave regarding these tiers yesterday. And a bit different to the other years, we are combining players who are dual position into the tiers. So you'll see a couple of names repeated in this one that we had yesterday, but they're slotting into a different area because we're talking shooting guard tiers. And another reminder that tier 4 in shooting guard doesn't mean that needs to be the same as tier 4 in point guards. Those players aren't necessarily on the same level. Enough of that though. Let's talk tiers, because Matt, yesterday tier 1 in point guards had one bloke in it. Tier 1 for shooting guards has one bloke in it, and coincidentally it's the same bloke.
Yeah, we've left James Harden in both tiers just to he plays both roles, but they're with Russell Westbrook as well playing some point guard. So like we mentioned in yesterday's show, there's him and a few other guys who will be across multiple podcasts and articles. So I don't know what else we can say about James Harden, but yeah, tier 1 again for him and shooting guards.
Yeah, we talked about him yesterday. We talked about the possibility of a trade to the Nets and what that does. So you can go and check that out in yesterday's show. But basically our idea is that, yes, he's got such a large buffer at number 1 that if he is traded to that team, then maybe he goes back to being equal with number 2. Maybe he goes to being number 3. But he's not falling outside the top 10. He's not falling outside the top 20. So even if you do pick him at number 1, I don't think you should be too worried. James Harden is James Harden, and he's going to put up numbers. And one of the reasons people go, oh, you should be picking Luka Doncic ahead of Harden. The thing that goes unnoticed with Harden is that he gets like 2 steals a game and a block a game. Like that's a difference, and that goes completely unnoticed with the 30 points and 8 rebounds and 8 assists or whatever he does. The fact that he gets 2 steals and a block is an unbelievable contribution, and that is why he's as high as he is. And if he's playing on Brooklyn, there's no reason why he's still not going to get those steal numbers. For as bad as a defender he is, he gets defensive stats, and I think that's going to continue for him. But in tier 2, now we get some different players, because we've got your mate Devin Booker, Matt. We've got Bradley Beal, and we've got Paul George. Now, I want to start with Beal first, because he was great last year. But he does have to share the ball a little bit now with John Wall. And while Beal is the better player, and Beal is probably going to get more usage, I just think that those ball handling opportunities, he was basically the point guard on this team last year. He's not going to be that this year. So he's going to fall back a little bit from where he was as the 10th ranked player overall last season.
Yeah, I think so. We've got him back in towards that middle of the second round. But as we mentioned yesterday, there are some question marks around John Wall. He's apparently or reportedly wants out of Washington. They've said that if he does stay there, the GM came out and said that Wall won't play in back-to-backs and he won't play the big minutes prior to that injury. So I think Beal will still get his fair share, but even if he drops, 1 assist per game, that just brings him back a little bit. Devin Booker, just unbelievable efficiency. If you actually add Booker's field goal percent volume and his free throw percent volume, he's the most efficient player in the game this season as per the projection. So that's a good one for those, particularly in rotisserie leagues. And Paul George, he brings the most steals and 3-pointers of this group. However, arguably offers the least durability. We know he battled shoulder injuries the last season, only playing those 48 games, and the Clippers will want to keep him healthy again for another deep playoff run this season. So, a nice little group there in Tier 2.
I know the answer to this, and it always stuns me, but I'll ask you this. How many minutes a game did Paul George play last year?
Oh, thanks, Josh. 34.
29.6. Right.
Whoa.
So, and he was a 25th ranked player in 29.6 minutes. So, he could easily be back in the top 10, regardless of shoulder problems. He played under 30 minutes a game. It is actually crazy to think that, but he did.
That is crazy.
He could play 33, 34 a night, and he's back very comfortably. He could be ahead of Embiid, LeBron. He could be ahead of Devin Booker, because that's an extra 4 or 5 minutes a night, and he's not coming off dual shoulder surgery. So there's pretty big upside in Paul George, and I believe on ESPN he's ranked in the 30s, which if you are drafting there, that is the steal of all. Somehow they're predicting him to be worse than last year, when everything is telling me that he's going to be significantly better. So he is a massive one. Again, that's why I asked you that question, not so I could trick you, because nobody would know that. I've looked at it and I look at it and I go, that cannot be right.
Yeah, that's
and he played
crazy.
under 30 minutes a night. It just doesn't make sense. And it's because he missed the start of the season. He came back and they eased him through. But it doesn't make sense that he played that few minutes per game. And you can't. It's like when you tell people that Alex Len is older than Chris Boucher. People don't believe you. Like, it's one of those numbers which it just sticks in your head, and you go, how is that possible? But it is for Paul George. So remember that when you look at his numbers from last year, he could play 5 extra minutes per game this season, and that's going to bump him all the way up, maybe even ahead of guys like Booker and Beal. I didn't talk about Booker. How do you think he's going to be impacted by Chris Paul?
I don't think there'll be a massive change. Like I mentioned before, that efficiency, if that can take another jump, which I'm not sure is possible,
it'd be hard.
He like I said, is just elite from the field and the free throw line. But it's going to be really interesting to watch those two coexist. Booker likes the ball in his hand, and his playmaking and passing has improved significantly over the past couple of years. But I'm probably more excited to see what Chris Paul does to DeAndre Ayton's game, and if he can just fast track his development and get in some easier looks and feed him the ball and see how those two work together. But for my Phoenix Suns, hopefully that will mean a long-awaited trip back to the playoffs.
I have his true shooting actually jumping up this season, because I think he only shot, I know he shot just 35% from 3 last year, and that can go up. I don't imagine his 2-point shooting goes down. He was a 92% free throw shooter. Maybe that falls off. And I think his assists will drop somewhat, but he's still going to be in that early second round area. Let's flick it over to tier 3. So we've got a bunch of guys here. Now, we already talked about Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. He could very easily jump into that Devin Booker tier this year, I believe. But we've also got Jim Butler. We've got Zach LaVine, and we've got Fred VanVleet. Out of those names, I think people would be saying, well, one of those isn't quite like the others, and that's VanVleet. Yahoo's ADP has him outside the top 50. Again, insanity. He was the 29th ranked player last year. Are we thinking he's going to be that much worse? And he shot like 41%, I think, last season as well. So if he shoots better than last season, I don't think his minutes are going anywhere. Like, why are we expecting him to be so much worse? I think he could be an interesting steal on draft days. And I think, look, you are basing these off my projections. Do you look at this and go, well, VanVleet shouldn't be sitting with these guys?
No, definitely not. Once again, the elite steals really bump him up. The 1.8 steals there. The strong assist, 6.6. So he provides the best assists and steals of anyone in this group. Shai, we talked about yesterday. Jimmy Butler, exceptional run in the playoffs, and once again that shortened off season is a slight concern, and the Heat might look to ease him into the season. And Zach LaVine, he's turned himself into a really, really good fantasy player. Career high in points, rebounds, steals, and 3 last season. Those numbers and keep himself healthy, then he'll be a nice player as well. And some decent players here in tier 3 and a lot to choose from.
Jimmy Butler was the 23rd ranked player last year. Yahoo's got his ADP at 17 at the moment. I feel like there is a lot of NBA Finals Dutch ruddering going on, because he was great in the playoffs and he was great in the finals, but we're not expecting 40 minutes, or 45 or literally 46 minutes a night he was playing at times. Like, it's just not going to happen. So I think he's definitely getting the bump because of the playoff performance, and I would not want to invest in Jimmy Butler at pick 15 or 16.
No, definitely not. And yeah, just when we think, I guess when we think like defensive numbers and Jimmy Butler, we think of as a high steals guy. We've got him projected at 1.6. Yeah, Fred VanVleet is 1.8. So that might be a bit of an underrated point of his game.
Absolutely. Let's move on to tier 4. We've got two guys in here, and there'll be a name that, again, that people think probably shouldn't be in that spot. And the ADP's Fantrax ADP has Donovan Mitchell at number 21, which is it's pretty aggressive. We've got him in the third round in tier 4 here. And again, it's the bubble bump where he scored 50 points multiple times in a playoff series. That's great. It's just not going to happen like that in the regular season. I think he's taking a step forward, but is he taking that step forward? I'd be pretty surprised if he is a top 20 player. He could be, but what he needs to do is get the steal numbers back up, and he needs to make sure the free throw volume's up. If he gets to 8 free throws a game, then sure, he's a top 20 player. But if he's sitting where he has been with some moderate improvements in free throws, like he went actually backwards last year from 5.1 to 4.7. If he stays around that area, it's almost impossible for him to get back to being, or to get up to a top 20 player. His rankings over his 3 years in his career, Matt, 44th, 43rd, and 45th. Yes. I've got him taking a bit of a leap this year, but it's far from guaranteed. And up to 21 is just too much faith for me.
Yeah, and maybe he's just going to be one of these players who is a better real life player than a fantasy player. But if Mitchell can get his assists to, even add 1 per game and get it to that 5 to 6 mark, and the steals from 1 to 1.2 to 1.4, that's going to make a massive difference in his overall ranking. And as you mentioned, the free throw percentage as well. So yeah, a little bit of upside, but I think this season's really going to tell us, whether Donovan Mitchell can put himself up into the elite category in terms of fantasy, or like I said, he's just going to be a better real life player than a fantasy player.
His steals took a big dip last season as well. He had been a better steals guy, but it's all going to come down to, with me, his free throw attempt rate. Like if that gets higher, then he goes higher. To me, it's as simple as that, as to where he sits on the rankings. If he gets to 8 a game, which is absolutely a possibility, then he is a top 20 guy, but he's never shown it. He went backwards last year. He did have a strong run in the playoffs, but remember, we're talking literally a 7-game series against the Nuggets. It's 7 games, and he's not going to play that much, and he's not going to be that good over the course of a season. We haven't even talked Khris Middleton here because he just feels like the most absolute boring, consistent player that is just going to sit here and cool. What is changing? Maybe he loses a bit of usage with Holiday coming, but he just feels absolutely boring.
Yeah, he is, but maybe sometimes it's okay to be boring, Josh, as you and I both know. And yeah, if you just need a nice name who you can rely on night in, night out, just missed out on part of the 50, 40, 90 club last season. The steal rate declining over the last few years is a small concern.
I think that's a Budenholzer thing versus a Middleton thing, because everyone's numbers, like Giannis's numbers have dropped. The only guy who had high steal rate was DiVincenzo. Everyone else lost their steal numbers pretty much.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens again to that this season. But as you said, boring, but sometimes that's okay.
Let's go into tier 5. Khris Middleton's new teammate, Jrue Holiday, is in there. Could he be a victim of the Budenholzer steal drop as well? That's a problem. He's also going to have to play more point guard, because the only other point guard on this team is DJ Augustin, so that could help his assist, but usage will drop. So he's a weird one, because he's a guy that has always had top 20 potential. He also saw a weird drop in his free throw numbers last year. Like, he became an actual horrible free throw shooter for reasons that will forever remain a mystery to me. I don't understand why he all of a sudden, and it happens. Guys just drop 10 percentage points in free throws, and you never understand why it happens. He's, I think, too high on Yahoo at 28. Like last year, he was the 31st ranked player. Budenholzer's not going to play him 35 minutes a night. I feel pretty confident in that. So I think he's going to suffer a bit of a drop down, and I think this is the right area. And then DeMar DeRozan joins him here. Do you think they're going to play DeRozan at 3? Or, I know he's a shooting guard listed, but he's playing the 3 or the 4 pretty much this coming season.
Yeah, I think I've got him in our small forward tiers as well, because, like you said yesterday, we'll just wait and see what will happen with Derrick White and Dejounte Murray as well in that backcourt. But yeah, you can pretty much lock in 25 and 5 every night for DeRozan. Super efficient.
Much better passer as well.
And the best part about his game is you can make up his lack of 3-pointers later in the draft.
Yep.
But I guess the question around Jrue Holiday for you, Josh, will he finish inside the top 50 this season?
I think you're saying that because I've got him at the moment actually at number 50. So that's I would say yes. Maybe he goes 49. Yeah, so he's
I'll take,
right there.
I'll take inside just, but yeah, it's a tough one.
Remember, DeRozan played power forward in the bubble, but there was also no LaMarcus Aldridge or no Trey Lyles there. So I don't know how they're going to work all these minutes. Keldon Johnson needs minutes too. I don't think they'll play much of Devin Vassell because they rarely play rookies. But yeah, DeRozan's the thing that has really improved with him. Obviously, the 3-point shooting is completely in the shitter, but his assist rate has really jumped up, and that's providing him some extra fantasy value in tier 6. Matt, a couple of names that people probably don't agree with. Maybe you don't agree with it either. Derrick White in here and Marcus Smart. And, first of all, do you agree with it? Do you think this is wrong for these guys?
I probably was a little bit surprised to see Derrick White this high, but then when I went through the numbers and those defensive numbers stand out, in particular the blocks, the 0.9 blocks, which is elite from the guard position. Marcus Smart, and then you sort of flip it, he's strong in assists, steals, and some good threes, but then the field goal percentage and the lack of points. So once again, this is a really good example of two guys who do completely different things, but their overall value is basically equal. So it depends what you need at this point of the draft. But Josh, I can't fault you, and I'll back you in and trust your judgment and research.
Again, we talked earlier about how many minutes did Paul George play. I won't ask you the question, but I'll tell you the answer. Marcus Smart was the 60th ranked player last year.
Yep.
He played 32 minutes a night. But in the 40 games that he started, he played 34 minutes a night. And he's going to start this year because Gordon Hayward's gone. So I think we see an increase in his minutes. In his bench games, he played 27 minutes a night. So we're talking about a big leap forward here. Field goal percentage can be a problem, but he hits threes and hits them well. Steals are great. Rebounds, assists. He's going to have roles on this team. He's going to handle the ball more in those games that Kemba sits as well. Yes, they did bring in Jeff Teague, but Marcus Smart's fine here, and a guy that's completely underrated in fantasy. Oh man, this dickhead can't shoot, he can't score. Yeah, but he does a lot of other stuff, and it is really valuable. And Derrick White I think he really showed that he can be a star in the bubble. His 3-point volume was through the roof. He was banging them in. He had high usage. He was running things. He was playing great defense. That could work out poorly, but he's also got an ADP outside the top 100. So you're not taking him in this tier. This is just where we value him. So a guy that, again, I'm looking to grab towards the end of drafts because, again, like we talked about yesterday with DeJounte Murray, there's no way Popovich is saying, well, you two guys just play 24 minutes a night now. If it happens, then I don't know what I'll do. I'll apologize. But this is no way that it's happening. I just can't see how it's going to happen.
Yeah, and we still haven't seen the best of Derrick White yet, so plenty of upside there. So, yeah, like you said, sort of the mid-rounds, and, yeah, one to target. Write his name down, highlight it, do whatever. Type it into your spreadsheet, bold it. But yeah, keep an eye on Derrick White.
Here's a question for you. Who's older, Marcus Smart or Derrick White?
Marcus Smart.
Yeah, by a couple of months. They're both 26.
Yeah, it's close.
Yeah, so White is a much older player for his experience in the leagues. He came in at 21 maybe, whereas Smart came in after, I think his sophomore season, but was a little bit younger. But yeah, White hasn't been around as long, but they are the same age. Tier 7. Some familiar names here. We've got Eric Bledsoe listed here. Probably could have been in the point guards one as well. CJ McCollum, Bud Hield, Jaylen Brown. Now, Hield is an interesting one. Of course, Bogdan Bogdanovic is gone from Sacramento. Buddy hates Sacramento. Sacramento hates him. But I think they're going to have no choice but to play him more minutes and to start him. They would love to trade him. I think he'd love to be traded. I just don't think there's any interest out there for him. So it could really blow up in your face because if he gets traded and plays 22 minutes a night, then he's not going to be worth this. His ADP is actually much higher than where we've got him. So in a lot of cases, he's just going to be someone, if you're looking at what I project or what we think, you're probably not going to end up with Hield. But I'm real concerned. Or do you think, Matt, there's a chance that they just say, like, screw this dickhead. You're coming off the bench and Corey Joseph is starting and then Tyrese Halliburton's going to start over him because he's not good enough to be a starter. Whereas, maybe you could say, well, we're just going to have to at this point. I'm not sure that I'd be just going all in on him starting.
Yeah, I'm not convinced, and it probably fits better in that 6-man role. And maybe they do start, or eventually start Halliburton next to Fox and see how that rolls out. But just in general, I just really don't like this tier. We talk about boring. CJ McCollum's pretty boring, a handy source of points, assists, and threes, but there's limited upside. Buddy Hield, the points and threes, Eric Bledsoe is about to turn 31, and he's sort of tailing off a bit. And Jaylen Brown, like we mentioned before, he's probably one of these guys who maybe falls into the category of being a better real life player than a fantasy player.
Yeah, I think that's
his
definite.
numbers look good across the board, but unfortunately, he just doesn't have that killer category that can go and win you a week in head-to-head leagues. And his sort of
shooting.
numbers.
Sorry, mate. The shooting's the worry for Jaylen as well, because he was a poor free throw shooter. He bumped it up last year, but it did start to fall off. And if it goes back to being in the 67 range instead of in the 70s, then that value does take a tumble. The Bledsoe one is interesting to me because I imagine he starts, and instead of playing 29 minutes under Mike Budenholzer, he could play 35 minutes a night under Stan Van Gundy, although Van Gundy does limit point guards too. So I think there is some upside value in Bledsoe around this area, also despite his age. And again, playing in a system that's not Budenholzer's where you're discouraging steals. He used to be an absolute terror for steals. And if that comes back, then if he was a top 30 player at the end of the season, I can easily see the pathway for him doing it. I'm not banking on it, but I can see the pathway for him getting back to that area, whereas McCollum, HIELD, and probably Jaylen, I don't really see that for them. I think this is probably the right area for them, but it's the right area for Bledsoe, but I could see a pathway to how he exceeds it by 2-3 tiers pretty comfortably.
Yeah, and just on Jaylen Brown, if you're looking for that sort of threes, rebounds, steals combo, wait till we get to small forward tiers, because there are so many players who you can get a little bit later on who can provide those categories. So I think Jaylen Brown will be one of the guys who gets overdrafted this season.
Tier 8 is one guy in this. Probably, some people would call him a point guard. He played exclusively shooting guard last year. And that is the Padawan, Colin Sexton. Although, Matt, I don't understand why is he got an ADP of 128 on Yahoo. This guy was 84th last year. And as much as I don't like his game, he improved his efficiency. He did improve his assist rate towards the end of the season. It's still low. He still gets no rebounds and gets no steals, but he scores at a high rate and he was hyper efficient. I don't think that's all of a sudden falling off. So I don't understand why he's currently being considered a guy to be 40 spots worse than what he was last season. So I think that he fits perfectly here, and a guy that maybe is looking to be a bit of a steal.
Yeah, and if you're drafting soon and you can take advantage of that ranking or the ADP, then go ahead and smash it. But good scorer, good efficiency, as you said. The assist numbers proved, and that's about all I've really got to say about him. There's nothing sort of overly interesting, but
he's not going to come out and average 7 assists a game. Like, we forget that.
No.
That's just not going to happen. But if he could average 25 points, that's a possibility. But with very little else. But it's still got value in it, and I think that we saw that with him last year. Tier 9, some names that don't necessarily look like they fit together. Victor Oladipo, Donte DiVincenzo, Evan Fournier. Now, Oladipo, of course, was a first-round player a couple of years ago. Matt, that's done. It's never happening again for him.
That is correct. He's a long way off of that, and sadly only played a total of 55 games in the past 2 seasons, and we've seen the best of him.
But I think in saying that, he'll be better than last year. I don't think there's any doubt about that, where he was the 168th ranked player and played 28 minutes in 19 games. He's going to be better than that. So he's going to be fine around this area. But people will question the DiVincenzo one. And that's fine, because he hasn't proven it. But did you know that Donte DiVincenzo ranked higher than Victor Oladipo last year on a per game basis?
It wouldn't have surprised me.
By 40 spots.
Yeah, well, that does surprise me.
And he played 5 fewer minutes.
5 fewer minutes.
Yeah, so it's mainly because of the high steal rate, but he's got massive room to improve his shooting as well. And who else is starting next to Jrue Holiday? Bryn Forbes, cool. DJ Augustin, maybe they start him, but DiVincenzo's getting those minutes. Like, he is the better option there. And I've only got him projected at 29 minutes a game. That maybe is low, although under Budenholzer probably not. But even if he plays 27, he is a guy that is getting drafted last pick in drafts, and I am all about him.
The only thing I will say, and I do like him and I do like his outlook, but the only positive category that he's providing us is steals.
Absolutely.
And that's a plus 1.48 Z score, 1.5 steals per game. Everything else is just below average. It's not huge. But I'm all for taking him into the last sort of pick or two in the draft as well.
Yeah,
But yeah, just know that his steal rate does bump him up significantly.
Yeah, because if he falls off in steals, then he could drop 20 spots really comfortably. But again, you're investing the last pick or the second last pick in him, and I should think you should be doing that. Fournier, you talk about boring players, like this is his numbers. He could vary 40 spots if he hits 40% from 3 or 33% from 3. He's been up and down the last 2 years. But otherwise, everything else is just going to be rock solid. He's going to get minutes. He's going to get opportunities. He's going to get usage. Nothing's changing on this Magic team, and he'll do it again for one more season. Tier 10. We've got quite a few guys in the old Tier 10 here. Let's run through them. Alec Burks, Andy Wiggins, Norman Powell, Bogdan Bogdanovic, Tyler Hero, and Seth Curry from the Philadelphia 76ers. What are we making of this group? Again, people will see names that stand out there, and the first one to me is Alec Burks. I know why he's that high, but what do you think of him being at that area?
I was a little bit surprised when I saw it, but yeah, the 14, 15 points per game, couple of threes, got him at 4.5 rebounds, which is really good for a point guard. He did have some big lines last year, so maybe it's worth taking a flyer on him as well, potentially starting at shooting guard with the Knicks. Andrew Wiggins, we know he's a strong scorer, but that's about it. Norman Powell could have had a really big season if Fred VanVleet had left, but he'll be in his normal six-man role again. Bogdan Bogdanovic, his numbers will drop off joining the Hawks. Tyler Hero will be overdrafted, and Seth Curry, he is going to drop threes in bunches this season.
Yeah, so he's going to give you high efficiency Curry. He's going to give you, obviously those threes. Not much else, and maybe you could let him slide a little bit. There's a couple of names there that stand out. I'm not going to talk too much about Wiggins and Powell and those guys. I think Hero is interesting. I think he's probably going to be the starter for the Heat. He can be inefficient at times. He'll improve his assist numbers. I think there's a risk that he does get overdrafted somewhat, and I believe he's ranked like in the 80s on ESPN. He's 99 on Yahoo, which is, I think that's fine. But if he starts pushing into the 80s or 70s, it's too high. But back to the Burks one, because that's the one that, again, I did it, and I look at it and go, it looks wrong. So why is he there? Because who is starting for the Knicks here? RJ Barrett, Julius Randle, Mitch Robinson, probably. Right, they're probably your 3, 4, and 5. Point guard's probably Alfred Payton. And then who's the other guy at shooting guard? Will they start Frank Ntilikina there?
Yeah,
maybe. Austin Rivers? Like, no. Why would you start Austin Rivers? Yeah. Alec Burks is who I've got penciled in. And maybe you say, well, no, they start RJ Barrett at the 2, and that's fine. Then who the hell is the small forward? Reggie Bullock? Kevin Knox?
Knox, yeah.
Iggy Brazdakis? Like, who is starting at the 2 and the 3 on this team? And Barrett's got one of those spots, and the Burks one could be wrong, and there's a lot of downside in it, but it's either Burks, it's Ntilikina, it's Knox, it's Bullock. Like, who the hell is getting excited about that group of players? Burks proved it last year on a bad team. He's going to be on a bad team again. He's got another opportunity. Again, this is a guy that you take way at the end of drafts, and if it doesn't work out, who cares? But that opportunity is there. He doesn't even have an ADP on Yahoo at this point. That is how he's outside the top 200 on ESPN. Like, nobody is paying any attention to him. And while we've got him in this tier, it could not work out. It could also work out way more than this. Because if he is the starting shooting guard and Tom Thibodeau goes, mate, like, I like it. He's getting 35 minutes, and then he's pushing way higher than this. So there is massive upside for Burks. You might just disagree and think someone else starts. Who else do you think? I think Frank is probably the biggest challenger to it.
I would think so, but then Ntilikina and Payton doesn't really work together either.
No, it doesn't. It's a horrible combination. That's why you're having a guy like Burks to help Randle, to help Barrett, a guy that can shoot. Maybe it's Bullock, but Burks is a significantly better player because he can pass and he can dribble and he can handle the ball as well. And I think that it makes a lot of sense. It could be real wrong. I could be way off on that, and I have absolutely zero confidence in it. But when you try and put it all together, it makes sense for him to be in that area.
Or if he doesn't start and he's coming off the bench and he's getting big minutes and big usage in that six-man role.
He doesn't even need 30 minutes a night. Like, give him 27, 28, and he's going to be a standard league player. Tier 11, we're rounding this thing out now, Matt. We've got Terrence Ross, we've got Devonte Graham, we've got DeLon Wright, and we've got Duncan Robinson. Graham, just shot horribly last season. I know he finished the year pretty highly ranked at 58th, and I've got him down much lower. It's because I think usage is falling. I think he's going to play fewer minutes. He played like 35 a game last year. I don't think he's playing that many. And I just think with LaMelo Ball there, he's losing some opportunities. He'll still play over 30, but it won't be quite at that same level. And he is, again, a guy that is much older than you expect. He's actually the same age as Andrew Wiggins, which is staggering to think about for a guy heading into his third season. So I've got him down here. Dunk Robinson, I think that there is a risk that he loses minutes because we saw him lose minutes towards the end of the season to Tyler Hero. So again, a player whose ranking was much higher last year where he was the 114th ranked player. And then old favourite, Matt, DELON Wright. So I thought he'd fit perfectly in Dallas. It was horrendous. I got that wrong. I think he's going to have to start in Detroit, but yeah, can you talk me out of it? Like, who else is starting there? Svi?
Svi, maybe.
They're not going to start Rose and Hayes together, surely.
You wouldn't. Who knows? Yeah. So they've got Hayes, Wright, and Rose, and Svi. How do you say his last name? McCalluke.
Yes.
I haven't said that for like 12 months.
Look at Josh Jackson and Wayne Ellington. They're not starting.
Josh Jackson's not starting. Wayne Ellington, you wouldn't think so, but the spacing on this team is horrendous. The whole roster is just an absolute mess. So, yeah, let's... Oh, gee. I was going to say let's pencil in Hayes and Wright with Derrick Rose off the bench, but...
That's how I've got it, but
yeah,
it's up in the air. And Wright's a guy...
It's ugly.
Again, I don't think he's going to necessarily play 30 minutes a night, but he can still have value in this area, get some steals, some assists, hit some threes, get some rebounds. It's just okay. And if he played 35, then he'd smash through it. He's just not going to do that, and there is limited upside with him there. Out of that group, Graham's got the highest upside because if they do go back to him and play him 35 next to Mallet, which I don't think they do, but if they do, then that will bump him up quite a bit. And then into the final tier here, Matt, tier 12, Josh Richardson, Lou Williams, KHRIS LEVERT, and Tim Hardaway. Right, some names there that people will think they're all better than the guys in tier 11, especially KHRIS LEVERT. Why are we down on KHRIS LEVERT?
First of all, his efficiency is very, very poor. I'll just bring up his numbers. But yeah, also trying to play between Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant, that's going to be a struggle for touches. We've got KHRIS LEVERT at 43% from the field and just 70 from the free throw line. So yeah, a massive drain there for both your efficiency numbers. If he does get moved, then potentially, those counting stats come up and there's a bit of value there. But it's going to be a struggle early on. And Josh Richardson, don't mind that move over to Dallas. Nice fit next to Luka Doncic, and we never saw the best of J. Rich in Philadelphia. So hopefully he can get back to some of his form and become a reliable fantasy option again.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to take that risk early on because, again, the usage isn't going to be there. His best season was when he was that number one option in Miami for that weird season. He's just not going to get that opportunity. He's not going to get the passing opportunities, which boosted his value. Defensively, he's going to be fine. I think he'll probably be better than he was in Philadelphia, but again, the upside there. And Lou Williams... it's just hard to see Lou continuing to... And remember, he played a lot more last year than he did, than he should have, really, with injuries to Paul George and Kawhi missing games. And Luke Kennard is also going to take some of that away from Lou, I think, at this point, who's going to be an interesting points guy, a free throw percentage player, and that's about it. And Hardaway, for as good of a season as he had, and it was a big surprise what he did last year, he was still the 151st ranked player because he hits threes and he doesn't really do anything else. And that's exactly what he'll do again this season. So, and people will have some disagreements with these tiers for sure. The LEVERT one, we can't project it out to say, well, we think he might get traded somewhere, therefore we're going to give him 30 usage and 34 minutes. Like, nothing makes sense if you do it that way. And that could happen, and his upside is fine. If he goes to Houston and becomes the number one player there because Harden and Russ are gone, then he'll smash it, even though he will have those issues with his percentages. And we saw what he did when he was the number one guy in the bubble. But now he goes to this team where he's probably going to be starting, but Kyrie and Kevin Durant are there. Joe Harris, Spencer Dinwiddie. Like, all these guys are going to get shots. LEVERT's not going to have the ball in his hands. He's not going to be running things. He's not going to be playing 35 minutes. So those opportunities for him. And he wasn't even a top 110 player last year in 30 minutes a night, despite having no Durant and no Kyrie for most of the season. I know KHRIS missed a bunch of time himself. So he does strike me as a bit of a bust candidate, especially at his ADP of 85. It's not high, but it's not what I want to be doing, and I'm just looking to see where he is on ESPN at 79. It's just, I don't see the need for it.
No, way too high.
That'll do it for us, Matt. That is the shooting guard tiers done. We're going to be doing the rest of these tier shows over the coming days, so make sure you're subscribed. Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, YouTube, and then you will never miss a show. Matt, people know where you are on Twitter. It's at SMan Sports. Go and follow Matt over there, and thank you for coming on again with me.
No, always fun, Josh, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.
Yes, guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.